Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the New York City Bar Association's 33rd Annual Henry L. Stimson Medal Ceremony. My name is Richard Donoghue. I am the current chair of the Bar Association's Stimson Medal Committee, and along with my fellow committee members, I'd like to thank you for attending this evening. This is, of course, as it often is for us at this time of year, a very solemn eve. And I think in that way, it's a particularly fitting night to honor people who have committed themselves to the safety of New Yorkers and Americans and to the enforcement of the laws that keep our nation safe. So thank you all for being here. Like my predecessor, Mark Hellerer, who helmed the Bar Association Stimson program for more than 30 years, and thank you again, Mark, I am a partner at Pillsbury Winthrop Shaw Pittman, the firm that sponsors the Stimson Medal program and tonight's event. This is, of course, a very special night. It marks the 33rd time that the City Bar Association has honored the men and women of the U.S. Attorney's offices in the Southern and Eastern Districts of New York for outstanding service, sacrifice, and exemplary dedication, not only to the city of New York, but to the nation and the world. We do this by honoring two AUSAs, one each from the civil and criminal divisions of the two U.S. Attorney's offices that serve this city. The recipients are selected for upholding the traditions of excellence and integrity established by Henry L. Stimson when he served as United States Attorney in the SDNY over a century ago. First, it's my honor to note speakers and winners from tonight's program. Our keynote will be presented by the Honorable Gary R. Brown, District Judge of the District Court of the Eastern District of New York. The medals will be presented by my friend and Pillsbury partner, David Keyko, the Vice President of the New York City Bar Association. And tonight's award recipients are, of course, from the SDNY Civil Division, AUSA Jeffrey Kenneth Powell, from the SDNY Criminal Division, AUSA Lara Pomerantz, from the EDNY Civil Division, AUSA Varany Nelson, and from the EDNY's Criminal Division, AUSA Nadia E. Moore. Please join me in giving them a round of applause. We have a number of honored guests tonight, including SDNY U.S. Attorney Jay Clayton. Thank you, Jay, for being here. We have EDNY U.S. Attorney Joe Nocella. Thank you, Joe, for being here. And the EDNY's First Assistant, Carolyn Bocorni, who retires at the end of this month. Thank you, Carolyn. And SDNY's Deputy U.S. Attorney Sean Buckley. Thank you all for being here and for representing your offices tonight. We also have a number of judges, former U.S. attorneys, current and former AUSAs, prior recipients of tonight's award, distinguished defense counsel, and other luminaries of our profession. I thank you all for being here. In the interest of time, we won't name you all, but thank you for being here. Next, let me present just a brief explanation and background for the Stimson Medal. The medal was initiated by the Bar Association in 1992, and it honors the memory of Henry L. Stimson, who was the United States Attorney for the Southern District of New York from 1906 to 1909. Stimson later continued his distinguished career in public service, serving as Secretary of War under three presidents, Taft, FDR, and Truman, and as Secretary of State under President Hoover. Stimson was appointed to the U.S. Attorney position as part of a wave of Teddy Roosevelt reformers. He inherited an office where the U.S. Attorney's salary had just been cut from $100,000 per year to $10,000 per year. He had 8 assistants who made between $750 and $1,500 per year, a paltry sum even in those days, and most of them believed that their position was a part-time job. One of his first edicts was requiring his lawyers to come to the office every day. A man after my own heart. At that time, any important litigation matters in the office were outsourced to private attorneys, as it was presumed that marginally competent government lawyers could never stand up to the giants of the bar who represented wealthy individuals and big corporations. But in a little more than 3 years, Stimson transformed the SDNY and set the model for U.S. attorneys' offices across the country. He replaced politically connected assistants with poorly paid but talented, public-minded young lawyers. He did so by offering them the opportunity to handle the office's most important matters and impressing upon them the satisfaction of public service. He used new statutes passed by Congress to prosecute major corporate wrongdoers like the New York Central Railroad and the American Sugar Company, as well as executives of prominent companies. Perhaps most characteristically, as the U.S. Attorney, he personally tried the most important cases brought by his office. In a few short years, Stimson created a legacy characterized by integrity, hard work, contempt for corruption, tenacious investigations, and meticulous trial preparation. The standard of excellence on which he insisted remain the hallmark of the offices today in both the Southern and Eastern Districts of New York. It's that tradition we honor tonight. The award itself was initiated in 1992 by Ted Clark, a Pillsbury partner who served as the New York City Bar Association president and who had the honor of working with Stimson as a young associate in the law firm Winthrop, Stimson, Putnam, and Roberts, a predecessor to today's Pillsbury firm. The purpose of the award is to promote the principles that Henry L. Stimson insisted upon as United States Attorney. Those principles, which are the criteria for determining the award recipients, are absolute integrity, candor, and fairness in dealing with adversaries in the court, outstanding contributions to public service, highly developed professional skills, and personal courage and conviction. The current members of the Bar Association Stimson Committee are New York City Bar Association President Mohammed Faridi, New York City Bar Association Executive Director Brett Parker, and Mohammed and Brett both wished to be here tonight, but unfortunately other events intervened and they asked me to extend their thanks and congratulations to our honorees. Other committee members are Jonathan B. New, a partner at Baker Hostetler, former New York City Bar Association President Susan Coleman, a partner at Jenner & Block, and my friend, associate, and predecessor, Mark Heller, a retired partner at Pillsbury. We thank the committee members for their work this year. The selections are based on nominations presented by the U.S. attorneys, and given the quality of the nominees every year and the remarkable work they do, this is always a very difficult task. Each nominee can justly claim extraordinary accomplishments. In years past, at this point in the presentation, Mark would go through a list of some of the prior recipients and talk about their contributions. In the interest of time, I'm not going to do that tonight, but I would note that it's prominently displayed on the New York City Bar Association's website. And trust me when I tell you, it is an august group, and they have done incredible things. Next, it is my honor to introduce our keynote speaker tonight. The Honorable Gary R. Brown, United States District Judge for the Eastern District of New York, was sworn into his current position in December of 2019. Judge Brown graduated from Columbia College in 1985 and received his J.D. from Yale Law School in 1988. Following law school, he clerked for the Honorable Jacob Mishler of the Eastern District of New York, affectionately known as the Mensch on the Bench. Following his clerkship, Judge Brown joined the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Eastern District of New York as a civil AUSA, serving as, among other things, the office's affirmative litigation coordinator. After 7 years, he transferred to the ED&Y Criminal Division, where he served in a variety of positions, including Deputy Chief and later Chief of the Long Island Criminal Division. As an AUSA, he handled a wide range of notable matters, including complex asset forfeiture cases, the prosecution of a VA doctor serial killer who murdered several of his patients, the prosecution of more than 80 members of the Pagan Outlaw Motorcycle Club, and the prosecution of a fraudster who managed to buy the New York Islanders, despite the fact that he had absolutely no money. After serving as an AUSA for 16 years, Judge Brown went on to serve as in-house counsel at Computer Associates, a Fortune 500 technology company, where he served as, among other things, the company's chief compliance officer. In 2011, he began his service as a United States Magistrate Judge in the Eastern District of New York, where he continued to serve until he took a seat on the district court bench. Judge Brown's journey from magistrate judge to district judge was neither short nor easy. First nominated by President Obama in July 2015, he was given a hearing weeks later, and by early November 2015, his nomination was voted out of committee, meaning that he needed only a simple floor vote in the United States Senate to take the district court bench. Alas, that did not happen. And his nomination expired at the end of the 114th Congress in January 2017. But defying conventional wisdom and proving that, yes, there are things we can all agree on, Judge Brown was re-nominated for a district court seat, this time by President Trump, in May of 2018. He was again voted out of committee, but in January 2019, his second nomination expired at the end of the 115th Congress. Undeterred, and proving again that the third time is indeed the charm, Judge Brown was nominated for a third time in April of 2019, and in December of 2019, more than 4 years, 2 presidents, and 3 Congresses after he was first nominated, the United States Senate confirmed him to a seat on the district court bench, thereby perpetually confounding journalists who, for some reason, feel the need to name the president who appointed the judge whenever they are discussing their judicial decisions. In his time as a magistrate judge and district judge, Judge Brown has presided over dozens of trials and has issued hundreds of opinions, many of which are particularly notable, including one landmark decision directing flood insurance companies denying Superstorm Sandy claims to disclose all draft engineering reports to policyholders, an order that led to the complete overhaul of FEMA's National Flood Insurance Program. And another decision conditioning a criminal defendant's sentence of imprisonment on a Bureau of Prisons decision to incarcerate that defendant in a facility other than the MDC due to conditions at the facility. He has taught at various law schools, including New York Law School, St. John's, and Fordham. And because he is more than just a man of the law, it's worth noting that Judge Brown is also a black belt in Taekwondo and an accomplished amateur magician, as well as the author of 2 published books and many articles on the art of magic. I'm told that he can even make cases on his docket disappear. Please join me in welcoming to the podium tonight's keynote speaker, the Honorable Gary R. Brown.
All right. I'm delighted to be here tonight, but don't let that go to your head. Like most judges, I'm easily delighted. But it's true, because most days we're in court, and in court, particularly federal court, someone is going to jail or someone is paying money. No one's happy. There's no joy in a courtroom most days. But then I come to an event like this, and everyone's dressed up, and everyone's excited. It's like a wedding. It's great. But tonight, it's with good reason. Because tonight, we gather to award the Stimson Medal. This is the award that recognizes outstanding Assistant U.S. attorneys from 2 prestigious prosecutorial offices, the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Eastern District of New York, and the other one, I have it here, the Southern District of New York, sir. There we go. Of course, I'm kidding when I do that. That's a little inter-district jibe. We do that now and then. What I'm about to say, I'm not kidding about. Those two offices represent probably the greatest prosecutorial offices, in my view, in this nation and probably the world. And to say that we are recognizing these winners means that they represent the highest ideals and traditions of those offices, and that's saying something. And I want to say to the winners, you're in good company. If you do not believe me, I've done research for tonight, check out the list of prior winners. It's staggering. Many of them went on to continue to pursue careers in public service. I'm not going to mention all of them, there's many. But some of them are judges, and not just judges. I mean great judges, judicial stars, people like Rich Sullivan at the Second Circuit, Cheryl Pollack, my buddy on the Hurricane Sandy cases in the EDNY, Valerie Caproni in the Southern District, I worked with for a lot of years, and Scott Dunn, who's on the state Supreme Court. Others went on to serve crucial roles in the Department of Justice, roles of national importance, people like Rich Donoghue, David Kelly, and Marshall Miller. And virtually everyone on that list went on to go through a distinguished career, lead a distinguished career in some area of the law. I am thrilled to serve as your keynote speaker tonight, but my path here was a little bit unusual. Richard was very kind in his introductory remarks. I just want to give you a little context on some of that. I was just out of law school in 1988. I was 24 years old, and I became a law clerk to Judge Jacob Mishler, who was just a legendary jurist and considered by many among the greatest trial judges in the nation. And he instantly became my mentor. And the whole year that I worked for him for 1 year, and he went out of his way to extol the dedication of the AUSAs who appeared before him. He'd always say to me, Gary, watch them. Watch it. They do such excellent work. The best ones, he would say, fight for justice, not for revenge. And they're motivated only by the desire to do the right thing, so you can trust them. That was really something. And as the 24-year-old law clerk, that made a tremendous impression on me, so much so that I applied. And after some months, I secured an offer from the U.S. Attorney's Office, Eastern District Civil Division, which prompted me to immediately pick up the phone and call the Wall Street law firm that I had accepted an offer from and withdraw because I got this job. And having taken care of those details, I went in to see Judge Mishler to announce the news. His reaction wasn't exactly what I thought it would be. I said, Judge Mishler, guess what? I'm going to be an assistant U.S. attorney. He said, oh, that's interesting. And then he did something odd. He raised his finger and said, wait now. That was his thing. He would say, wait now in court. And that meant he had just figured something out, and the hammer was about to come down. He said, wait now. Weren't you going to work for some big Wall Street law firm? I said, Judge, you know I had an offer to be an associate. Right. And what did that job pay? Now, please remember, this is 1988, so you have to multiply out what I'm going to say. It's big, but these were big dollars. I said, they were going to start me at $90,000. And he said, what about this new job you just got? What is that going to pay? I said, well, they haven't given me the exact number yet, but I looked it up. I think it's like $34,000. He then said only 5 words more. He would only say 5 more words on the subject, 5 words that hit me like a 5-car freight train. He looked at me in the eye, and he was not kidding. He said, have you lost your mind? I was devastated. I really was. And fortunately, a friend in the U.S. Attorney's Office kind of put me back together, and I decided, what was I going to do? I already withdrew from one offer. I couldn't pull that move again, and I needed a job. You know, I had to pay the bills, so I guess it worked out. I stayed for 16 years, almost evenly split between the civil and criminal divisions. And in that job, I was lucky enough to handle the most amazing things. I mean, they gave me responsibilities that you should not have given to that 25-year-old kid or whatever it was at the relevant moment. And I had the kinds of experiences that any young lawyer would be lucky to have, and it defined my legal path. It really did. And I was rewarded handsomely in that job. Not the pay, we already covered that, right? But there were other rewards. The work itself, and I know there's a lot of AUSAs and former AUSAs here tonight, the work itself is its own reward. And as you heard from Richard, I got to do all sorts of things. I was the head of the ACE program for a while, where we did all sort of interesting civil work, and they made me head of the Long Island Criminal Office. I was chief there. I won the Director's Award for Superior Performance as an AUSA 3 times, each one of them being handed to me by a different Attorney General of the United States. And in 2002, I was named Federal Prosecutor of the Year. I say this not to brag, but again, to give you context. Because when the phone rang this summer and I got contacted by the Stimson committee, I thought, where did I put my Stimson medal? And I was going to look for it, at home, in the attic, whatever. And then I remembered, I didn't win the Stimson Award. And then I thought, this is great. I mean, it's long overdue. But I'm going to get the Stimson medal. Now, Richard, who is in charge of the committee, he had the breaking news to me, I mean, because after all, I had 16 years in the office. That's 16 Stimson ceremonies come and gone. Like a bad lotto scratch-off ticket, it was 16 chances to win and nothing. So when he called me, he said, we're not giving you the Stimson medal. I was crushed once again. He said, but we're going to ask you to speak. I said, what, you mean you're not giving me the medal, really? And he said, no. Now, as an AUSA, I learned to be feisty. So I put myself back together. I said, oh, and why not? And he said, Gary, you haven't been a federal prosecutor in 20 years. You're not eligible. You have to be a current AUSA to get the award. I wasn't backing down so easily. I said, oh, really? Where is that written? So he told me. It's on the website. It's on the nomination form. It's in the committee rules, and it's in the association bylaws. So this was a dead issue. I was still honored to speak. I was still honored to come here tonight, but I still felt a little self-conscious about coming to the Winner's Circle and never having been inside the Winner's Circle. So like all of you, I'm a tireless researcher. I did a little research to make myself feel better. And I want to let you know that there is a very long list of Stimson non-recipients who have contributed importantly to our society. I will give you several examples. Not one Olympic athlete has won the Stimson. No one in the U.S. space program has won the Stimson. And think about it, astronauts, we cover them, medals, patches, hats, all. No Stimsons, no. No U.S. president has won the Stimson. And as I say that out loud, there might be reason for that, but we'll leave that there. Henry Stimson himself never won a Stimson. Now, I know that's a little circular, but I thought it funny, and I thought I would point that out. My research then carried me back to the Stimson website, where I looked at the list of prior keynote speakers, and I was reassured to see that many of them also did not win the Stimson. And I'm not talking small potatoes here. I'm talking legal giants. My personal legal hero and mentor, Guido Calabresi, never won a Stimson, but stood up here and gave this speech. Well, not this speech, his speech, which is probably better than my speech, but you get the idea. It's a concept. Joe Bianco from the Second Circuit, also never won the medal, but he came here, and Margot Brody, our chief judge. So I realized something after tonight. When asked if I won the Stimson medal, my answer is going to be, I won it? No, I'm on the faculty. I think that works. Anyway, so, but I want to speak to my fellow non-recipients who are here, particularly those of you who've never been to one of these ceremonies before. I feel obligated to warn you about something. May happen, may not, but there's an odd tradition that has arisen during the course of these ceremonies over the years. Now, in my preparation for tonight, I learned that it was not formally prescribed. No one was required to do this. It just happened. And the reason it happened is because the recipients, past and present, are largely a group of overachieving, hyper-competitive intellectuals who feel compelled to show off their incredible research skills. And this is how it's manifested itself. It's the weirdest thing. They spontaneously developed this concept where their acceptance speeches might, again, they don't have to, they might, include incredibly obscure details about the life of Henry Stimson, right? This is a strange thing, right? And they'll get up here and they have unearthed from the annals of history the strangest thing. Now, it's not clear what the point of all of this is and what the indicia of success is. I mean, what are they going for? I think it's to try to come up with the most arcane fact imaginable. If you imagine watching Jeopardy and you heard somebody say, "I'll take Henry Stimson for 1,000, Alex," that's the fact they're trying to fill in, I think, right? And in years past, we've learned that Henry Stimson has a mountain named after him in Montana, that he was best man at Teddy Roosevelt's wedding, and he hosted, I have to read this one, Thanksgiving Day barrel races at his farm in Huntington. I barely know what that means, but I'm not making it up. That's all true, and that's been said at these events. And it begs a question, which is, after all these years, aren't we done? Hasn't everything about Henry Stimson been elicited by now? But I'm going to share a fact about Henry Stimson, a little peccadillo of his that is rarely flaunted, but he obsessively chronicled his own life. He left a diary, listen to this, a diary of 50,000 typewritten pages. Now, for those of you who thought I was going to say 50,000 words, no, no, no. That's 12.5 million words that he wrote about his own life, including recording his breakfast menus. I ate this on Wednesday. Not kidding about any of that. So, there is an unlimited wellspring of Stimson trivia out there. If you happen to be that rare individual who has always wondered whether our Secretary of State preferred cream of wheat over oatmeal tonight might be your lucky night, or if we're unlucky, we'll learn something even more obscure about him. But either way, I just wanted to warn you. Now, I need to talk to the recipients. I am largely going to leave the accolades to others, and I will not lampoon the recipients. There are two very specific reasons for this. The truth is, I've read about your work, which is extraordinary and exceptional. I am not kidding about that. It is breathtaking, the things you've done. But with one exception, I'm not truly personally acquainted with the winners, with one exception, and that exception is Ms. Nelson, who is my second reason for not commenting further, because we know each other for decades. And we worked together in the Civil Division, and she supervised my work. Now, anyone who knows Varney knows she is an incredibly talented, powerful litigator. She's a wonderful human being. And anyone who knows her also knows that she is fierce and tough as nails. And notwithstanding the fact that I have Article III protection, I still remain just a little bit scared of her. So there will be no satirical remarks aimed by me at the candidates. That will be left to others. But I do have something important I want to say to these candidates. I served as an AUSA under 3 presidents, 5 attorneys general, and 6 different U.S. attorneys. It is an immensely important and an immensely difficult job. And the difficulties multiply exponentially during times of political and administrative transition. There are new priorities, policies change, they implement all sorts of new things, and the upheaval can be a tremendous distraction. I truly wish that you and your colleagues could be spared these intrusions because the work you do is too important. That said, after reading about the struggles and achievements of each of these candidates, I am certain that you will rise above the falderall, you will keep calm and carry on with the quiet resolve that your calling deserves. I want to offer my heartfelt congratulations to the winners and their families and friends, because you all deserve the award. This award represents a milestone. Only the best of the best qualify for a Stimson Medal. I should know. I'm on the faculty. I'm Judge Brown. Let's celebrate. Thank you.
And now, for the most important part, I'm going to ask my partner and friend, David Keyko, Vice President of the Bar Association, to come up and present the individual awards to our recipients.
Thank you, Rich. Thank you, Judge Brown. Put this down here. So as Rich has said, Mohammed Faridi was very disappointed not to be here to be able to make this presentation. I was very pleased because I'm very much looking forward to making this presentation and extolling some of the many great things that these very worthy recipients have done. In fact, when I was told that I was going to be making this presentation, Rich said to me, "Don't worry, I'm going to write a couple paragraphs about each candidate, and so you can describe that." And of course, I have all these papers here that Rich wrote, and you can't possibly include, even if you just take the highlights, the great things that these candidates, or these recipients, I should say, have done. So let me start off with the Eastern District of New York on the civil side, and talk about AUSA Vernie Nelson. So, Assistant U.S. Attorney Vernie Nelson graduated with high honors from Lehigh University and graduated cum laude from Harvard Law School. After serving as litigation associate at a law firm, she joined the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Eastern District of New York in 1987. Throughout her nearly 40-year tenure, AUSA Nelson has served with distinction and been an exceptional leader in the handling of civil appeals. Generations of EDNY civil AUSAs have been mentored by her and have benefited from her wealth of knowledge and experience. Impeccable judgment and exceptional brief writing skills. Combining remarkable insight with unwavering dedication, AUSA Nelson has built an extremely successful, wide-ranging, and impactful appellate practice that has commanded the respect of the Second Circuit and the Department of Justice. In the EDNY, AUSA Nelson has held numerous supervisory positions, including Deputy Chief of Appeals, Chief of Appeals, Acting Deputy Chief of the Civil Division, Deputy Chief of the Civil Division. She currently serves as the Civil Division's Chief of Appeals. As the Civil Division's Appellate Chief, AUSA Nelson supervises the office's civil appellate litigation, which includes writing and editing briefs, preparing brief writers for oral argument, participating in moot courts, and assisting in developing civil division litigation strategies. Notably, during the time she has served as Deputy Chief of Appeals, AUSA Nelson has personally handled or been very closely supervised, or has very closely supervised, more than 500 appeals in the Second Circuit, resulting in over 400 decisions and 100 published opinions. AUSA Nelson's appellate practice extends to every substantive area of the practice within the civil division, including FTCA, Bivens, employment, prisoner, immigration, Social Security, FOIA, and class action cases in defensive litigation, as well as civil rights, False Claims Act, environmental, drug diversion, healthcare, restitution, civil penalties, and injunction relief cases in affirmative litigation. By way of example, and Rich has given me a series of cases, the first one I read and I thought, wow. I had dinner last night with Charles Binder, who I know and who I've represented for years. He's an incredibly fine lawyer. The first one was your victory over Binder and Binder in the Colvin case, where, as a matter of first impression, the Second Circuit held that the Social Securities Act fee provision does not waive the government's sovereign immunity from suit. Next one is Kangemi, if I pronounced that right. Versus United States, where the Second Circuit held that the FTCA's discretionary function exception precluded claims brought by seaside property owners alleging that the United States Army Corps of Engineers had been negligent in assessing erosion caused by jetties owned by seaside towns. And Town of Southold versus Wheeler, an action brought against the EPA under the Coastal Zone Management Act, where the Second Circuit held that the EPA did not abuse its discretion in determining that a newly designated waste disposal site was consistent with the state of New York's coastal management plan. In addition to her own appeals and numerous supervisory positions, AUSA Nelson also serves as a member of the Civil Division's senior management team and is the vice chair of the Civil Division's hiring committee. The New York City Bar Association is pleased, and very pleased, to recognize AUSA Verity Nelson for her exemplary service, dedication, and supervisory excellence. Her tireless and long-term dedication to justice and public service exemplifies the Department of Justice's highest traditions, making her a deserving recipient of the prestigious Henry L. Stimson Award. Ms. Nelson? Congratulations. Very well good.
Thank you. I've been in AUSA a long time, but my remarks I want them to be brief. I intend them to be brief. But I am going to start in 1986 because in the fall of 1986, I thought I was maybe at least minimally qualified to be an AUSA, so I applied to the District of New Jersey, the Eastern District, and the Southern District. And although I sent my applications by snail mail, because that was the only option back in the 80s, the response from the District of New Jersey came back at the speed of light. It was an unconditional rejection. But the Eastern District and the Southern District were kind enough to offer me interviews. And my Eastern District first round interview was scheduled for late October 1986. And on the day that the interviews were supposed to happen, well, just a day or so before that, the Mets, with the help of Bill Buckner, won the World Series. So I wanted to go to the parade, and I wanted to go to the interviews. I managed to do both because the parade was in the morning in Lower Manhattan, and the interviews were in the afternoon in Brooklyn. So that all worked out, I guess. I mean, it worked out for the U.S. Attorney's Office and me. It hasn't worked out for the Mets. But anyway, my post-parade interviews at the Eastern District that day were Bob Begleiter, who, Gary, you probably, Bob Begleiter, whose enthusiasm for the work of the Civil Division was contagious, Kyo Matsumoto, who's now a judge in the Eastern District of New York, and Deborah Zwani, with whom I worked with on appeals for many years, and probably Judge Brown worked with her too. And I'm not, since 1986, there have been many people, my family, my friends, my colleagues, who have contributed towards my being here today. I'm not going to name all of them. I do thank for this nomination and selection. I thank John Durham, Joe Nacella, Rich Hayes, Judy Phillips, Susan Riley, and of course, Rich Donoghue, who's not you, over there, sorry.
There's only one seat up here for
Yes,
the two of us.
I don't know why he went and sat over there,
That's a
but
tag team.
yes, and you too. And he just can't jam me, I think. But, you know, I didn't represent Ken Jemmy, so I don't know. So I'm not going to talk about the years between 1986, which is a long time ago. It was in the 80s, by the way, and they weren't that bad. But it was. I'm not going to talk on the years in between, but as I said, there are many people who have contributed to my being able to be here today. And I do think that if things hadn't worked out the way they did over the years, I would at this point, to quote Dancing in the Dark, be tired and bored with myself. Thank you.
So I'd like to continue with the Eastern District, since we have Judge Brown here, and award those first. No slight to the Southern District. Assistant U.S. Attorney Nadia E. Moore graduated from Williams College in 2006 and the NYU School of Law in 2009. After law school, she joined Davis Polk and Wardwell LLP as an associate, and then clerk for the Honorable William H. Walls of the District Court of the District of New Jersey. She's actually the second person who's, or the first of the two people who clerked for Judge Walls. She joined the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York in 2013. In her 12 years as an AUSA in the Eastern District of New York, AUSA Moore has served in the general crimes and organized crime and gang sections, as well as on detail to the D.C. U.S. Attorney's Office. As the Chief of Intake and Deputy Chief of General Crimes, AUSA Moore supervised junior prosecutors in cases spanning narcotics, firearms, child exploitation, fraud, immigration, and public corruption. She has served on the office's Project Safe Childhood Committee and the MDC Working Group. She has served as the EDNY's reentry coordinator and initiated an innovative gun crime program aimed at reducing gun violence in the district. In her own cases, AUSA Moore has focused primarily on violent crime and investigations and prosecutions. Most notably, she has personally led investigations that resulted in the indictment and conviction of dozens of leaders and members of the MS-13 and Latin Kings street gangs for crimes related to narcotics trafficking, firearms offenses, arson, kidnapping, extortion, robbery, aggravated assault, racketeering, and murder. For example, in the United States versus Amador Rios case, AUSA Moore led an investigation and prosecution of an MS-13 leader who participated in multiple armed robberies, one of which involved the pistol whipping of a store owner. The defendant had instructed junior members of the gang to commit acts of violence, including an attempted murder that left a 16-year-old boy paralyzed. After a 4-week trial, the jury convicted the defendant on 17 counts, and he was sentenced to life plus 38 years imprisonment. In another prosecution, something that a non-lawyer, I think, would have trouble understanding that sentencing. In another prosecution, AUSA Moore secured the conviction of an MS-13 leader who was responsible for ordering the murder of an 18-year-old victim. Following her year-long investigation of violent crimes in the Chinese community in Brooklyn and Queens, AUSA Moore secured convictions of 9 members of the so-called Zheng organization. There, in 2 trials in back-to-back weeks, AUSA tried and convicted 2 of Zheng's underlings for their participation in 2 different extortions, resulting in 2 guilty verdicts within 7 days. In United States versus Qing Ming Yu, AUSA Moore secured the conviction of the president of a construction company and a co-conspirator for the murder of a former company employee. After a 5-week trial and AUSA Moore's compelling rebuttal summation, The defendants were quickly convicted. When AUSA Moore and the trial team exited the courthouse after the guilty verdict was delivered, several of the jurors who were present literally applauded them. The defendants were both sentenced to mandatory terms of life imprisonment. AUSA Moore has also secured convictions against members of the Gambino, Bonanno, Colombo, and Lucchese mafia families, as well as methamphetamine, so meth, traffickers, and other dangerous defendants. Her trials have lasted as long as 19 weeks, and as a trial attorney, I can tell you that's tough. My longest, I think, was 3 months, and I was dead by the end. The New York City Bar Association is pleased to recognize AUSA Nadia E. Moore for the dedication, exceptional trial record, supervisory excellence, and mentorship of junior attorneys. Her unwavering dedication to justice and public service exemplifies the Department of Justice's highest traditions, making her a deserving recipient of the prestigious Henry L. Stimson Medal. Nadia?
Thank you. I'd first like to thank you, Rich, the Stimson Committee, and the City Bar for this tremendous honor. Judge Brown for his wise and insightful and very funny words, and David for his kind introduction. I'd also like to thank U.S. Attorney Joseph Nasella Jr. and U.S. Attorney John J. Durham for nominating me. To receive the Stimson Medal is to join a distinguished line of federal prosecutors who have dedicated their careers to justice. When I learned that I'd been nominated for this award, I looked at the list of former winners, and as you've already heard, it's an amazing set of recipients. My former supervisors and mentors, distinguished judges, and leaders in private practice. It's truly an honor to be joining this illustrious list, and I'm deeply humbled to be recognized alongside of my fellow recipients. Congratulations to you all. I also want to acknowledge Pillsbury for their continued support of this award, which honors Henry Stimson's legacy of principled public service. It's been said that the noblest motive is the public good, words that Stimson embodied throughout his career. Understanding that being a prosecutor is not just a profession, but a calling to serve something greater than ourselves. For me, this is the only job I've ever really wanted. I knew that I wanted to work in public service because I believe in the power of the government to do good things for its people. And being an AUSA has provided me with a unique opportunity to serve the public. To have your guiding principle be doing justice. To stand up in court and say that you represent the United States. From the first day I walked into EDNY as an intern during law school, working with Jim Gatta and Amy Busa, AUSAs in the EDNY have uniformly been dedicated to seeking justice. And in the past 12 years, in EDNY has taught me that being a prosecutor means serving as a guardian to justice and the rule of law. Whether you're prosecuting a murder in East New York, a complex financial scheme, or holding responsible those in office who have abused the public's trust, we carry the same responsibility to seek justice, fairly, thoroughly, and without compromise. Perhaps the most rewarding aspect of my current role as a supervisor in general crimes is watching new AUSAs discover their own calling to this work. Every day I see young lawyers transform from nervous baby AUSAs into confident advocates for justice. I see them learn that being a prosecutor means being a teacher, teaching juries about complex fraud schemes, teaching law enforcement about evolving legal standards, and teaching communities that justice applies equally to everyone. And they do it all with passion, kindness, and humility. I've seen how this work challenges us to grow both professionally and personally. Each case teaches us about something new about the law, about human nature, about our responsibility to the communities that we serve. Now, anyone who knows me knows that my love for this job is perhaps equaled only by my love for tennis. And Hall of Fame tennis player Billie Jean King famously said, "Pressure is a privilege." Serving as an AUSA certainly comes with pressure. The pressure of high expectations and stressful situations, the pressure to ensure that the law serves not the powerful or the well-connected, but justice itself, impartial, thorough, and fair. The pressure to offer some semblance of justice to the mother of a 31-year-old son who was murdered for operating a business in competition with a defendant's company. The pressure to provide answers to the parents of a 17-year-old boy years after he disappeared and was found murdered in a park. The stakes of our work are very high. But serving as a federal prosecutor is also a privilege. It's an opportunity to achieve great things and serve the greater good. We are called to this work not for personal gain, but because the public good demands it. There's no greater privilege than representing the United States, and no greater responsibility than ensuring that our justice system works for everyone. The work we do matters not because it is perfect, but because it is necessary. Every prosecution we bring, every case we take to trial, every brief that we write contributes to a system of justice that, while imperfect, strives towards the ideals that define us as a society. And as I look to the future of federal prosecution, I see both challenges and opportunities. We face increasingly sophisticated criminal enterprises, evolving technologies that create new avenues for harm, and a public that sometimes questions the very institutions that we serve. But I also see remarkable young lawyers joining our ranks, committed to the principles that have always guided this office: fairness, integrity, and unwavering commitment to justice. This work is not accomplished alone, and I want to thank former U.S. Attorney Breon Peace for his leadership and his trust in allowing me to help shape the next generations of prosecutors. I'd also like to thank the other 11 U.S. attorneys that I've served under, including Loretta Lynch, who made me the happiest person in the world when she called to offer me this job, and Executive U.S. Attorney Judy Phillips, who is a trusted sounding board and, perhaps more importantly, the best baker in the Eastern District. I want to thank my former supervisors and mentors who taught me what it means to be an AUSA: Patrick Sinclair, Seth Ducharme, Liz Geddes, Kristen Mace, Alon Lifshitz, Shri Varial, Nadia Shahada, and the late Lisa Kramer, who was taken from us too soon. They taught me that the measure of a prosecutor is not the number of convictions you obtain, but the fairness and integrity with which justice is pursued, and whose excellence, dedication to, and love of this job have inspired me to continue to serve in this office. I'd like to thank all my incredible trial partners: Mike Robati, Kirill Mehta, Amit Kabrawala, Matt Miller, Drew Roll, Jason McCullough, Eric Henderson, Connor Mulrow, Anna Karamigios, Rafaela Belizaire, Devin Lash, and Gabe Park. Federal prosecution is fundamentally a team effort, and I've been lucky enough to work with colleagues who make me a better prosecutor. To my law enforcement partners who work alongside us every day, thank you for your dedication to making our community safer. And to my family and friends who have supported me through late nights, long trials, and the weight of this responsibility. Your understanding and encouragement have made this career possible. You've been a constant source of inspiration and perspective, reminding me of what matters most beyond the courtroom. Thank you again for this incredible honor. Thank you.
So, before we leave the Eastern District, I'd like to say a word about the Mets. Just unlike the people on this dais, they have been major underachievers this year, but I still haven't quite given up hope. Fingers crossed. All right, now turning to the Southern District, I'd like to start with United States Attorney Jeffrey Powell. He graduated magna cum laude from University of Pennsylvania and summa cum laude from University of Pennsylvania Law School. After law school, he clerked for the Honorable William H. Walls of the District Court of the District of New Jersey. Following the clerkship, he served as an associate at Debevoise and Plimpton, and it says that, but I'm pretty sure it was LLP when you started there. From 2000 to 2004, AUSA Powell served as a staff attorney at Children's Rights, a national nonprofit advocacy organization that sought to improve failing child welfare systems through impact litigation. At Children's Rights, AUSA Powell represented thousands of foster children across the country in federal class action lawsuits seeking to improve the quality of care and services. In 2004, he joined the New York State Attorney General's office, where he served as a section chief in the Civil Rights Bureau and later as the Deputy Chief of Consumer Frauds and Protection Bureau. During his 8 years at the Attorney General's office, AUSA Powell handled and supervised high-profile investigations and law enforcement actions in a wide range of areas, including discriminatory lending, housing discrimination, employment discrimination, mortgage fraud, and deceptive business practices. In 2012, he joined the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York, where he was appointed as the Deputy Chief of the Civil Frauds Unit in 2018 and Co-Chief of the Civil Frauds Unit in 2021. Upon joining the office, AUSA Powell immediately became involved in an investigation into the treatment of adolescent detainees at Rikers Island, which was being conducted pursuant to the Civil Rights of Institutionalized Persons Act. AUSA Powell and the team conducted a rigorous and comprehensive investigation, which culminated in a 79-page findings report, concluding that adolescents on Rikers Island were being subjected to serious physical harm due to the rampant use of unnecessary and excessive force by corrections staff. Were not being adequately protected from violence, and were being placed in punitive segregation at an alarming rate, and for excessive periods of time. After intervening in an ongoing class action, the team, along with Class Action Counsel, negotiated an extensive consent judgment requiring the appointment of a monitor and a comprehensive range of reforms. Since the consent judgment was entered in October 2015, AUSA Powell has spent hundreds of hours monitoring and enforcing the Department of Corrections compliance. In November 2024, the court found the Department of Corrections in civil contempt of the consent decree. And in May 2025, the court issued an unprecedented decision to appoint an independent outside remediation manager who will report solely to the court and have broad authority to take necessary actions to cure the DOC's contempt. AUSA Powell also worked on a separate investigation into ADA violations at Rikers Island, culminating in a 2018 agreement requiring the city, DOC, and the New York City Health and Hospitals Corporation to provide incarcerated individuals with disabilities individuals with disabilities equal access to services, programs, and activities. In addition to his work on the Rikers Island matters, AUSA Powell has handled and supervised many of the office's largest and most significant civil fraud cases in a range of areas, including healthcare fraud, financial misconduct, procurement fraud, and customs fraud. AUSA Powell was part of a team that brought a lawsuit against the Bank of New York Mellon for overcharging customers for foreign exchange services, securing a $715 million settlement. He was also part of the team that brought a lawsuit against Novartis Pharmaceutical Corporation for providing kickbacks in exchange for drug recommendations, securing a $390 million settlement in that case. But maybe the best is for last. In 2019, AUSA Powell and another AUSA filed a False Claims Act lawsuit against the country's largest long-term care pharmacy, Omnicare Inc., and its parent company, CVS Health Corporation. After a 4-week jury trial in 2025, the jury awarded the government $135 million in damages, but a figure that was subsequently increased by the court to $948 million. Just missed that billion-dollar mark, but not bad. AUSA Powell also secured numerous other healthcare fraud investigations and litigations that have resulted in 10-figure settlements for the government. Several of AUSA Powell's civil investigations have also led to criminal prosecutions by the SDNY. Not surprisingly, the New York City Bar Association is very pleased to recognize AUSA Powell for his outstanding public service, exceptional record of achievement, and supervisory excellence. His tireless dedication to justice and public service exemplifies the Department of Justice's highest standards, makes him a deserving recipient of the prestigious Henry L. Stimson Medal. Ken, congratulations. Well deserved.
Thank you to the Stimson Award Committee and the New York City Bar for this great honor. It's a privilege to be recognized here tonight with all the other honorees. Congratulations to all of you. I'm going to focus my remarks tonight on a true sociological anomaly, the SDNY Civil Division community. Let's take a step back for context. The people who apply to be AUSAs at the Civil Division are hired are far from a random sample of the population. No, they are some of the most type A folks you can find. A type AAA crowd, so to speak. Before getting here, they needed to be at the top of their classes, compete to get into the most selective law schools, and battle to secure the most coveted internships, clerkships, and law firms. Unsurprisingly, they are also hyper-competitive, as Judge Brown alluded to, perfectionists, super argumentative, totally stressed out most of the time, obsessive and controlling, and very, very nerdy. In short, on paper, they are a truly insufferable group. Not folks you want to hang with. So what would you expect from a purely sociological perspective when you work at a place filled with such unbearable people? Well, you'd probably expect to be stuck in a pretty toxic workplace, kind of like the Hunger Games with the taste of Lord of the Flies on the side. But against all odds, the Civil Division community is exactly the opposite. The best part of my job over the last 13 years has been being part of this tightly knit, supportive, compassionate community, filled with some of the funniest and definitely quirkiest people I know. Like many others, I have developed some of my closest friendships through this job. The AUSAs in the Civil Division are always there for each other, inside and outside the office, and continue to be there well after they leave the SDNY. They are there to answer the most mundane and basic legal questions you may have, to lend a hand when the workload and deadlines become too overwhelming, to offer wise guidance when you just aren't sure how to handle a tricky situation, and to listen and advise you as you navigate the ups and downs of your personal and family life. Notwithstanding all of their accomplishments and victories in the courtroom, my colleagues maintain their humility and never take themselves too seriously, no matter how serious the work may be. The CivDiv's camaraderie is reflected in many great office traditions and events. Let's take a few. There's what's known as Lunch on 3, where AUSAs gather daily in a third-floor conference room to dine. Occasionally, there's some limited work-related chatter, but Lunch on 3 largely consists of AUSAs sharing random thoughts and observations, updating each other on their personal lives, trying to outdo each other with witty banter and remarks, and offering their typically unsolicited counsel on a range of issues far from work. And Lunch on 3 is well known in my family. Indeed, when faced with difficult decisions at home, my family often asks, well, what did Lunch on 3 think? Lunch on 3 is not the only bonding ritual in the CivDiv. There are roasts, where departing colleagues voluntarily subject themselves to merciless ridicule from one of their AUSA friends. There's Quiz Div, which basically is a very nerdy version of a pub trivia night. There's something called Feats of Strength, a competition held in an office conference room to determine who is the fittest among us. I've only been a judge in that one. There's Scotch Fridays, and sometimes Wednesdays and Thursdays. which should be self-explanatory. So what gives? Why has an office filled with a collection of AAA folks formed such a caring and tightly knit community? I'm no sociologist, but I'm getting a medal tonight, so I'm gonna give it a shot. The AUSAs, as well as the paralegals, legal assistants, and support staffs, are all deeply committed to the same set of core values and principles that drive our work every day. We all want to do the right thing for the right reasons, the right way, as we've been told over and over during our years at the office. To us, the job is not just about winning cases. It's about doing our very best to achieve justice one case at a time, being fair and doing what is in the public's best interest, treating others, including adversaries, with respect and professionalism, being open and willing to be persuaded that we are wrong when confronted with well-founded arguments or new information, holding those who violate the law accountable because of what they have done and not who they are, what they believe, or their political affiliation, and making decisions based purely on the facts, the evidence, and the law, nothing else. It's a privilege to work at a job where these are your guiding values every day. And I think it's those common institutional values and principles that make the CivDiv such a special community. I'm grateful to be up here tonight, but acknowledge that I'm receiving the honor during a strange, and some would say unprecedented times. Many of our institutional norms are being challenged. Things that we as career government lawyers never thought would happen are happening. And the public is doubting the motives of some of our actions and decisions. Most of this is totally out of our control. What is within our control, though, is doing everything we can do to stay true to the common ideals that we all share as AUSAs. And what is also in our control is making sure that we maintain the very kind and supportive community that we are all so fortunate to be a part of. Indeed, during these uncertain and difficult times, we may need to rely on each other more than we ever did before. On to the thank yous. First, I'd like to thank the U.S. attorneys for whom I've worked, particularly Jay Clayton for nominating me for this honor, and Preet Bharara for hiring me and creating the Civil Frauds Unit and pushing us to use new and creative approaches to combat fraud through civil enforcement actions. Thank you to the other current supervisors of the Civil Frauds Unit, Charlie Jacob and Jake Bergman. Charlie and Jake, it's a real pleasure to work with you every day. I've known Jake in particular for several years, both as a colleague and, at best, a mediocre softball teammate. For those who know him, Jake serves many roles in the CivDiv. He's our chief roaster, our resident comedian, basically our cruise director, planning most of our social gatherings. But somehow during the few hours he's not doing those things, he finds time to make great cases and serve as a mentor to many of our junior AUSAs. I'd also like to give a special shout out to Pierre Armand, who led the Civil Frauds Unit for many years before me and taught me so much. He is the true GOAT of the Civil Frauds Unit. And thank you to Rebecca Tinio, who was my co-chief before being promoted to be deputy chief of the division. In addition to being an extraordinary lawyer, Rebecca personally embodies each of the values of the civil division that I mentioned earlier. She is a dear friend who has always been there for me and puts up with all of my kvetching, while somehow also managing to be there for every other CivDiv AUSA. Thank you to my civil chiefs, Andrew Schilling, Sarah Shadovsky, and Jeff Ostreicher. Let me stop and take a moment to talk about Jeff, the rock of the civil division. Jeff has led the civil division during multiple government shutdowns, a global pandemic, 4 administrations, and by my count, the tenure of 9 different U.S. attorneys. No matter what happens, Jeff remains unflappable. He is a fantastic lawyer who regularly assigns himself the most difficult and sensitive cases. Jeff is a type of selfless, thoughtful, and caring leader that we all want as a boss. We are so grateful for his steady leadership. Thank you to my Omnicare trial team, led by Monica Fulch, one of the most tenacious and talented litigators I know. And thanks to the AUSAs who have worked with me for years on the Rikers case, including former AUSAs Emily Daughtry and Ellen Blaine, Magistrate Judge Laura Ashkenazi, and Rachel Dowd. Rikers is by far the most challenging and at times emotionally draining matter I've worked on at the office, and each of you have provided invaluable contributions to the office's ongoing efforts to reduce violence and improve conditions on Rikers Island. And I can't finish without giving a shout out to Jess Flores, who has been my legal assistant for over a decade. She is the person who really makes the Civil Frauds Unit run, as we all know, and she definitely deserves her own medal for putting up with me for so many years. Finally, thank you to my family, and especially to my wife, Hillary, and my children, Ellie and Zach. This job can be pretty all-consuming at times, but they are always there to support me, keep everything in perspective, make me smile, and remind me what is most important. I love you guys. Thank you.
Now let me turn to Assistant U.S. Attorney Laura Pomerantz, who's been sitting here for about an hour, or so, or over an hour, waiting patiently. She graduated summa cum laude from Duke University and cum laude from the University of Pennsylvania Law School. After law school, she served as an associate at Simpson Thacher and Bartlett LLP before joining the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York. Over her decade of service as an AUSA Pomerantz has handled some of the most complex, challenging, high-profile, and impactful prosecutions in the country. Simply put, AUSA Pomerantz's track record, which exceeds that of many lifelong prosecutors, reflects the best of the best. For example, she prosecuted, and I never knew how to pronounce her name, but I had to look it up, Ghislaine Maxwell, for sexually abusing minors with a co-conspirator, Jeffrey Epstein. Under intense scrutiny, AUSA Pomerantz deftly handled all aspects of the trial, from her jury address and direct examinations of two reluctant victims to her cross-examination of defense witnesses. Thanks to the efforts of AUSA Pomerantz, her teammates, Maxwell was convicted and sentenced to 20 years imprisonment. In the prosecution of U.S. Senator Robert Menendez, AUSA Pomerantz and her team untangled a complex web of corruption surrounding Senator Menendez, bringing charges against the senator and 4 co-conspirators. The case involved an enormously complex set of facts, with overlapping schemes across multiple players, years, and countries. AUSA Pomerantz and the SDNY team achieved convictions on all counts against all defendants, and in 2 separate trials, both of which lasted several weeks. Senator Menendez was sentenced to 11 years. Yet another example of her skill and dedication, AUSA Pomerantz led the investigation and prosecution of Dr. Robert Hayden, an OBGYN who was convicted at trial of sexually abusing patients over 2 decades and was subsequently sentenced to 20 years imprisonment. AUSA Pomerantz led the trial team through an intensely litigated trial, putting on multiple victim witnesses and delivering a powerful rebuttal. As in the Maxwell case, her ability to make reluctant witnesses feel comfortable enough to testify ensured the success of the case. AUSA Pomerantz also worked on the trial team that tried and convicted Norman Seabrook, the president of the Corrections Officers Benevolent Association, for accepting bribes in exchange for investing union money in a particular hedge fund. Among other things, she handled Seabrook's retrial after a hung jury, and together with her team, obtained a conviction vindicating the union members through both a jail sentence and restitution. AUSA Pomerantz has led the team that prosecuted former United Nations employee Kareem El-Karani, in connection with his sexual assault of 20 women in locations throughout the world. AUSA Pomerantz was the driving force behind the investigation that led to a guilty plea that took into account the entirety of El Khorainy's 17 years of sexual assault, resulting in a sentence to the statutory maximum of 15 years in prison. Furthermore, AUSA Pomerantz secured convictions of a Bureau of Prisons corrections officer for sexually abusing federal inmates, 2 defendants who bribed high-level officials of the Republic of the Marshall Islands, and 2 members of the Puerto Rico Police Department, along with a DEA agent, for their role in assisting a violent international drug organization responsible for, among other crimes, several murders. For more than a year, AUSA Pomerantz has served as co-chief of the SDNY's Public Corrections Unit. In that role, she has provided thoughtful leadership and generous mentorship to the dozens of prosecutors she supervises. She has used her experience in undertaking sensitive investigations and presenting evidence in complex trials to ensure that the investigations and cases she has supervised are conducted with the utmost diligence and integrity. She is a fierce advocate for the prosecutors in her unit and their work and motivation, and motivates others to meet the highest standards of excellence. And I know, Mark, I know that Rich cut out other things that were here. It just went on too long. So the New York City Bar Association, as with the other 3, is pleased to recognize AUSA Laura Pomerantz in her exemplary commitment, exceptional trial record, supervisory excellence, sorry, my voice is breaking, and compassion for victims. Her unwavering dedication to justice and public service exemplifies the Department of Justice's highest traditions, making her also a deserving recipient of the prestigious Henry L. Stimson Medal. Congratulations.
Thank you very much for the kind introduction. Thank you to the Stimson Committee and the City Bar for this incredible honor. Thank you to Judge Brown for your thoughtful and quite humorous words. Congratulations to the other honorees. It is a privilege to share this evening with you. Prior recipients of this award include so many people I admire. So to be in their company is beyond my wildest dreams and a true honor. I am grateful for the tremendous support I've had throughout my time in the office. While this award has been given to me, no public servant does the work alone. I would not be standing up here but for the colleagues who have supported me, inspired me, and done the work by my side. So I want to first thank the people who have provided that support, and then talk about what it means to me to have the honor of doing this work, of holding accountable people who have enjoyed incredible power and privilege for betraying the public trust and sexually abusing children and women, and about what it means to do such public service in the spirit of Henry Stimson, with integrity, fairness, courage, and compassion. I want to first thank all 9 U.S. attorneys I've served under. In particular, I'm grateful to Jay Clayton for nominating me for this honor. I'm grateful to Matt Podolsky and Danielle Sassoon for their brave leadership, to Damian Williams for giving me the opportunity to be a supervisor. And I'm especially grateful that Preet Bharara hired me as an AUSA. When Preet called to offer me the job on March 18th, 2015, I was stunned to silence. And this is a true story. He actually asked if I was silent because I was hungover from the day before, which was St. Patrick's Day. I was not hungover. I was silent because I couldn't believe that I was going to get the tremendous privilege and responsibility of representing the United States of America. I want to thank all of my former supervisors for their mentorship and friendship, both at the office and Simpson Thacher. Thank you for helping me figure out the kind of lawyer and prosecutor I hope to become, and for helping me become that person. I'm so fortunate to work with exceptional colleagues and law enforcement partners. Working with all of you has changed the way I see the world. I'm so grateful for your dedication, your service, and partnership. And a special thanks to all of my trial partners, especially my trial partners on the Robert Menendez and Ghislaine Maxwell cases. Those cases were hard fought and subject to significant public scrutiny. We got through it, we did it together, and it was worth it because we achieved justice. I also want to thank the AUSAs and paralegals I am lucky enough to supervise in the Public Corruption Unit. We are small, but mighty. You are an extraordinarily talented group who does complicated and sensitive work with humanity and tenacity. It is a privilege to work with you and learn from you. We have had high highs and really low lows. Know that I will always have your backs. To Rob Sobelman, my extraordinary co-chief, thank you. Thank you for being a great listener, team player, support system, cheerleader, and friend, and also for giving me space to express my personality. I also want to give a special thank you to Maureen Comey. On November 16, 2015, we started this job together. Since then, I've had the great fortune to charge, prosecute, and try several cases with her and to be supervised by her. Maureen, you are the definition of a generous and gifted colleague. Thank you for sharing your passion and talent with me and for making me a better lawyer and person. Even though we started on the same day, you have always been a role model for me of an exceptional prosecutor. Thank you to my parents for loving me, teaching me the value of both integrity and hard work and believing in me. And as my mom would say, you've given me roots so I know where I come from and wings so I can fly. Thank you to my sister who has never missed a single trial of mine. Seeing you in the courtroom has meant so much to me. To my son, Micah, who is not here because he is 2 years old. This event is going to go well past his bedtime, and it's not a public reading of The Adventures of Paddington or Moo, Ba, La, La, La. And so I still want to say a few words to him because I understand this is being recorded, and I'm hopeful he'll watch it one day. Micah, you are just the best. I didn't know what it would mean to be an AUSA and a mom at the same time, but having you gave new meaning to the job. Now, when I strive to do the right thing and to lead with compassion and empathy, I also do it to be your role model and to make you proud. To my husband, Jonah, thank you for mooting my openings, for keeping our lives together when work demanded so much of my time, energy, and person, for cheering me on with your characteristic optimism, and for not being type A. I love you very much. I also want to thank my grandparents who are no longer with us. Among other things, Henry Stimson served as Secretary of War from 1940 through 1945. I am the granddaughter and daughter of immigrants. My grandparents survived the Holocaust. This country took them and my mother in. That I now get to represent the United States every day is an honor that I do not take lightly. My grandparents taught me to treat others with dignity and compassion and to do the right thing. They taught me that every single life counts. I've had the great opportunity to spend most of my career at the Southern District of New York prosecuting people who abuse positions of power and sexually abuse children and women. The through line of that work is that no one is above the law. Honest government matters. Our democracy cannot function if we do not hold accountable public officials who abuse the power that they were given by the public. And we do that without fear or favor. We do the right thing, the right way, for the right reasons, without regard for politics, driven by the facts and driven by the law. It takes courage and integrity to uphold those values. The Stimson Medal was named for a man with courage and integrity who upheld his values at times of great turmoil in our country. I am proud that I see the AUSAs I supervise in the Public Corruption Unit live those values every single day. I've also had the incredibly meaningful privilege of prosecuting sexual predators, people who have done unspeakable things to children and women. That work has been hard. It has taken a lot out of me over the years, but it has also nourished me. Because prosecuting sexual predators is about giving power back to victims. I have grown with and from the victims who have given me the privilege of seeking justice for them, who every day remind me that no matter how hard the work is, what they have gone through is harder than the work, and telling the truth about their experiences is harder than the work. I have watched them confront their abusers and take their power back. And when those victims tell the truth about their abusers in a courtroom, no one, and I mean no one, can take that away. So I do have one more thank you to all the victims I worked with. To each and every one of you, thank you. Thank you for sharing some of the hardest moments of your lives with me. Thank you for trusting me. I carry you with me every single day in all that I do. Thank you.
Okay, just a few quick closing thoughts. We wish to note that the standards of excellence, integrity, and public service celebrated here tonight do not just happen. People make them happen each and every day. They require constant attention, effort, vigilance, and at times, courage. The rule of law and our fundamental legal institutions and traditions are critical to our American system of government. For those of you who have answered the call to public service, thank you. Congratulations again to our honorees tonight. There are some light refreshments across the hallway here if you'd like to further congratulate our nominees and their families. Thank you to the Stimson Committee. Thank you to the Bar Association. Thanks to everyone who made tonight possible, and thank you again to our keynote speaker, Judge Brown. Thank you and good night.